Welcome to the MetaView podcast. Hear these non-fungible conversations. They will yield you great knowledge and perspective. But beware, they might also make your brain go boom. So watch your step, because this rabbit hole goes deep. Good luck and have fun. Welcome, Stellar, to the MetaView podcast.
Hi there.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Just chilling in Mexico.
It's good you just moved there, you said?
Not really. Just a bit nomadic. I'll be going to Europe next in a couple weeks.
Oh, are you coming to Amsterdam?
I am thinking of coming to Amsterdam. Yeah. Are you? Is that where you live?
No, I live in Pula, in Croatia, but I'm going to Amsterdam.
Nice. Yeah, we might do an event in Amsterdam, but I'm not sure yet. But I might be going there still.
Nice, nice. Yeah, for us it would be the biggest metagame gathering so far in real life. So far, I think like 13 of us, and so far there was like 3 of us at most that met at the same time.
Oh, wow. Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah, but let's talk about you and your project, since you're on the podcast to do that. You want to give a brief intro to yourself for the people who don't know you?
Yeah, so my name is Stellar Magnet, and I've been in the Ethereum and DAO ecosystem since 2017. My first entryway into DAOs was participating in the Giveth community. They had a social coding circle. I was contributing some UX to Bright ID when it was a very early project then. And I joined because I was trying to figure out information on how to create a decentralized space agency. And that project was called Space Decentral. And, just through the different research and we're sort of trying to decide, do we build our own framework? Do we use an existing framework? And we decided to, go down the path of getting grants from existing frameworks, but then sort of things changed a bit and that project didn't ever launch as a DAO. And since then, I also contributed to other projects. Like I'm a member of Moloch DAO, and now I'm trying to get a new project off the ground called Black Sky, which takes some ideas that I had for creating a decentralized space agency, but it's, I would say, generalized than being a project that just aspires to be a decentralized space program. But there are definitely space elements still involved in the project. And right now we are trying to put together a proposal to get a zine and a wiki, funded to start to do some research on the DAO design, because one of the goals is like, how do we create like a very like large scale cooperative DAO? And like, a lot of the tools and systems today, they might not work very well if you have a DAO that has like 100 million members, for example. So that's sort of, like goals that we want to try to understand more, just so we can start building, technology and projects that require like, less capital from more people to get off the ground versus, how you see it today, where you need sometimes like people putting in big checks into projects, and then, the ownership and stuff starts to get more like, there are like these whales owning it versus like it's more distributed amongst a lot of people owning like a small amount of it or putting in a small amount of capital. So that's sort of the goal. And whenever I first was getting into the idea of creating a decentralized space agency, like before I even was thinking about DAOs. This was like in 2016. I was just kind of going through this thought experiment where it was like, okay, if you have 100 million people and they just put in like $10 each a year, you'd have $1 billion a year to work with. It's like, why is it so difficult to, or is it actually a difficult thing to convince 1% of the world to put in $10? And I never tried that experiment, and I think that technology, it's finally getting to that stage where we can try it with crypto, but still it's going to be hard to satisfy the needs of 100 million people. But if they're putting in such a small amount of money, it might not be that hard. So that's sort of what I'm up to now. And I think that with what you're doing with metagame, I think that maybe this is like your phase 3 or something like that. But I think that there are some sort of similarities with the projects, but they're a bit different approaches. But yeah, I have noticed some like ideological similarities. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to say how this crowdfunding makes it at least theoretically much easier, because it should be, again theoretically, much easier to get $10 from a lot of people than get like $1 million from one person, because that one person will be like, oh, but if I'm investing 1 million,
Yeah.
I want like I want to be sure that this project will be making money. Whereas people who are going to give $10, they're just going to give it because they want to see if the project will work. And that's sort of how I want to go with metagame.
Yeah, and I think that like the way for this model to work though, it's also like I don't think it will just be like, okay, one DAO. Like it's like, yeah, are able to figure out how do you connect like many different DAOs or organizations that want this sort of thing to like plug into this same network, where it's like each organization might have a different approach, but if like, okay, they agree on some fundamental principles of like, human organization or democracy, then, maybe it can happen. So that's why I think part of like how to crack this puzzle is figuring out, how do you create a network that is multiple DAOs that each have their different, approaches or identities, but kind of like coming together over something that's like, bigger than themselves. So that's what I think is sometimes a problem with, DAOs, crypto communities. It's like, everyone's very super into like their culture and the brand that they're creating, and they want that to be the one that's like pushing something forward. But like, whenever I'm thinking of this, I think, okay, everyone's gonna always be like competitive and they want like their DAO to win or this to be the brand. And I'm like, okay, how do we overcome that? And I think part of that is like you have to not even like give the larger DAO that you want to create. It's kind of like brandless to be able to create this network of multiple organizations coming together and like just creating something that's like beyond their brand or identity or specific personality versus like what is the actual like mission and principles, like what is like at the core or heart of it. So I think that would be something interesting to figure out if we can sort of overcome that in the crypto community at large.
It's super hard. I've been trying that for the past 2 years, and I can say it's definitely not easy. I really wanted, when starting metagame, I wanted it to be that neutral ground, as you said, like there's just an idea around which other people would aggregate, not a brand. But as soon as you start building it, it becomes a brand. And even with other projects who are like philosophically aligned and culturally, it's still hard to get people to like collaborate across organizations. And just getting a single DAO to work is hard, and then like inter-DAO, like organizing inter-DAO is just it's fucking hard.
Yeah, it is hard, but I think it's definitely the main thing. I'd love to figure out how to, if other people are aligned on such a thing. It's like, yeah, where is the chat room that you're hanging out in? Because it's kind of like you kind of I don't know. It's like I feel like you just sort of have to create this place that's like a blank slate. Okay, it's just some web page. It's like, black and white. There's simple text on it. It's just like it's so simple and not opinionated in any way. And then that might be one of the solutions, that because I think that it's important to have these other organizations that do have like identities, that have strategies for how to like bring people in to work on something that's like more specific. But if you want to create like something that's like, okay, 100 million people, it's like figuring out some sort of aesthetic or strategy language that aligns with that many people. I think that's definitely more difficult. So I think that might need to be just like the most generic, simple thing as possible. But then you kind of like people discover these different guilds or what have you through that, and then they align with the pocket that's doing the work that they feel like they can like add the most value to. Because I think, for example, if you're putting in $10 to a DAO, like that might just be like a very super simple thing. But the other mechanism I was thinking is, you can sort of vote like, okay, which sub organizations does that $10 you're putting in a year go to. You might say, oh, 10% will go to metagame, like 10% will go to like Black Sky, or like 20% will go to environmental research. So, you just sort of use dot voting to allocate which actual sub organization your $10 goes to. Like the sort of DAO design I've been starting to dream of and think of, but it's not really fully documented anywhere. But it's a very simple design as far as like what is the vote that the people do with the $10. It's like a very simple vote, but then you might join one of the smaller communities, or not smaller, but the SubDAOs, where they're allocating some of that capital to give grants or fund technology projects. And that's where like there might be more complex, deeper voting proposal reviews. But at the higher level, it's just like the most simplest, easiest way to participate, because if you're only putting in $10, and you're not making that much from it, you shouldn't have to do that much like labor to participate as well. And it should be fun and easy. So yeah, that's sort of what I've been thinking. But it's a very simple design at the higher level. But I think what's more interesting is like the pluralism of the DAOs within the network, and how they can be, experimenting or doing work in different ways and specializing in different areas of technology or research.
You're right. Bring it all together. But how do you even make something generic? Like, you might have tried making it generic, but as soon as you like wrote all those texts on the website, it already has a sort of a personality, and attracts certain kind of people.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I haven't launched this experiment yet, but it's just more like, okay, these are some ideas that are going through my head. But I mean, I think it won't end up being something that's 100% generic, but it will probably just be. I just think the mechanisms have to be like much simpler and easier for someone to participate in, where it doesn't take that much of their time. Like if you want to create a 100 million member DAO, because you just kind of have to think of, oh, like, okay, like if you're in a democracy in the world, it's like, okay, once a year you show up and you vote, or maybe twice a year, and sometimes people don't even vote. So it's like, okay, I'm not really interested in building like a new like digital nation, but it's kind of like this organization it's large scale. It's like a large scale organization. So there are some qualities that are similar to national democracies, where it's like, okay, you have to expect like the lowest amount of participation, but you still make it interesting and able for people to find the paths into the organizations where you can do more participation if you want to. But at the highest level, to be a member, there's not that much required.
You're right. Makes sense. But you said you haven't launched that yet. I thought that we were talking about the Black Sky network.
Yeah, so this is like something that the Black Sky Network wants to research, as far as the DAO design for like the higher level DAO design. But I think that's one of the things where I've been going back and forth. I'm like, okay, should it be called the Black Sky Network for this large scale DAO, or should Black Sky just be one of the sub-DAOs within this network that's doing this particular thing? So it's one of the things where it's just been going back and forth in my head, and I haven't really figured that out yet, because I think that it's just better to start it off as a research project, the large scale DAO, versus saying this is going to be called Black Sky, or this is, but it's like Black Sky is one of the organizations that wants this thing to be created in the world, but it's not necessarily claiming that it's going to necessarily be called the Black Sky DAO. For example, if a bunch of other people start learning about it and they're like, this is cool, like I have the same idea, how do we work on this together? It's like, I just want to eventually put the ideas out there and see what naturally emerges, and then sort of decide with the community that is attracted, they can decide what that larger scale DAO is called. Because I think Black Sky, there are some specific missions and projects that it wants to do, and it can just be its own sub thing. It doesn't have to be the larger thing if that doesn't really work well for bringing this idea to life. So I would say the idea is more important to me than what that larger scale DAO is called, personally.
You're right. Makes sense. I took a sort of a similar approach, although from the beginning it was called metagame, but I was trying to make this distinction between metagame and metafam, where I see metafam as like, we are the organization that started metagame, but as we move to the next stage of the project, phase 2, sort of want to like, we will be just one of many organizations who are working on metagame.
Yeah.
Similar line of thinking of like, we are not the ultimate organization that's going to be sitting on top of everything, but just fade into being one of many.
Yeah, definitely. I think just the game mechanics, I would say it's nothing that's fully in like the Black Sky way of modeling a DAO, which is maybe one of the differences, and I think that's what I was saying. Okay, it's okay for people to have these sort of different approaches and strategies, but it's like, okay, well, what if I really like the ideas around metagame, but I feel like there's something, it's like I feel like you've already developed the idea for many years. It's like too late for someone to come and be like, I love like the ultimate mission and goal, but can we just like change this and that? And like I just feel like, okay, well, how do people that feel like they want the same end goal but have like a different approach to getting there? It's like, how do you get those organizations to collaborate, and I think like these sort of DAO to DAO, it's kind of like there might have to be like one thing above that that's not just like this is metagame, but it's like, okay, if Black Sky and metagame want the same thing but they have like a different approach, then what is that? It's like, do they have to just try their own experiments and be like, okay, we'll see you at the end of the rainbow, or is there a way for people to figure out how to create something that connects things in different ways? So thoughts.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a bit of both, collaborating but also like taking different ways. And like, yeah, in terms of what you were saying, we really want to make it so that like people will be having their own instances. There won't be just one metagame, but the underlying data will be like either on blockchain or on ceramic or other like technologies that will allow other people to make their own brands and make their own instances that will look differently, have different modules, like different pieces, but that will all be interoperable. That's the dream. I just wanted to take us back to the Decentralized Space Agency.
Yes.
What was the goal with that? You wanted to start a space program?
Yeah, the goal of the Decentralized Space Agency was to start a non-governmental organization that is like a serious contributor to the future of humanity in space. Because right now, I feel like it's highly dystopian, like the outlook of space. It might be something that people use for battles of like nationalism and proving, like in the Cold War, it's like, okay, our nation's better because we accomplished this and that. And it's like, okay, SpaceX right now, they're sort of a branch of the US government, and they're advancing a lot in space, but like how does the access to the cosmos look to everyone else in the future if the only way towards space right now is through these nationalistic entities that have deep ties with governments versus, okay, can we actually create something that can go as far as entities like SpaceX or what have you, but in a way that is open to all the people in the world? Because it is a bit of a, like, just thinking about the future and how society is progressing. It's like if we did try to make space a place that was not like a geopolitical battleground, I think that it would lead to a less dystopian outlook on the world. So the trajectory of space right now just seems very dystopian to me. And I think, with crypto, there is the potential and possibility, for people around the world to put in their capital to fund a truly international space program that has yet to be created. So yeah, it's sort of inspired by Star Trek in some ways. Kind of like, how do we reach the Star Trek future versus the Star Wars future? I think the current way the world is operating, it seems more like we're going to have like Star Wars versus more of an environment of space being something that you explore, you research other advanced entities. You're doing a lot of science, and Earth is a place where we have overcome our tensions of like, okay, like you're in this country, you can't enter here. It's like if we have a more peaceful, united world that is no longer in constant war, then what the world will be doing is exploring space, understanding the cosmos, trying to figure out where we came from, or answers about evolution, answers about if there's extraterrestrial intelligent life out there. So I think that that's the future I'd like to be a part of.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, the concerning part about like if we don't get our shit together while on planet Earth, what will we do when we get out there? And as you said, like these battles and spreading this sort of extractive mindset of we just have to spread out and bring resources to Earth or conquer the universe. Like it's if we continue the current trajectory and just extend it into space, it will not go that well. No Star Trek for us.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think like one idea around Space Decentral and creating a decentralized space program was, okay, if you can create a project that requires billions of dollars of capital to become successful, but you create it and you encourage everyone to collaborate on it regardless of where you live, then you can start to give people more hope for human cooperation, for accomplishing very difficult things together and like overcoming our borders. So that might be like some sort of thing that can inspire people to figure out how we can make the world more connected. So that was just like one sort of lofty dream and an idea around it, that I think it was just more like, okay, maybe this might be an experiment that can allow people to start imagining that world and way of like working together and just doing something that puts a new marker on the map of what we have done together as humanity to inspire future generations to think beyond your race or your nationality when it comes to advancing science and engineering.
Right. And this was like still all about the decentralized space agency, or are you talking about how these ideas sort of re-emerged again in the black sky?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was the idea for the decentralized space agency, and it's still a part of of Black Sky in different ways. But yeah, I would say Black Sky is more than just an organization that is interested in advancing, space and science technology, but there was always a relationship between Earth too when it came to Space Decentral. We were always like, Earth is in space too. Whether you're a space agency, it doesn't mean you're only interested in the space outside of you. But I think that from a marketing perspective, it was always confusing to people. You had to always sort of defend it versus just not calling yourself a space agency, but just having space being a component of it. I think it's more clear from like what your missions and goals are. So that's just sort of a tweak.
Also, instantly feels much more attainable without the space exploration part involved.
Yeah. Yeah, we were trying to, like, one of the first projects we were trying to work on was 3D printing on the moon. And I was like, okay, that's like that space mission idea. It's too big, costly, complex to actually pull off without having proven yourself in some respect first. So yeah, the space mission that's being, I would say, planned or incubated within the Black Sky Network, because it's probably going to be like its own sub organization versus like this is Black Sky's space mission. It's a much simpler mission that will be easier to pull off, and our approach is not to do it all as like a decentralized project right away, but to just have like a small group of people that actually launches something into space and then allows people to participate in it in different ways, as opposed to the initial design and engineering process to get it to space, but we hope that after we sort of get this off the ground, then the future missions that happen after that, there will be more participation, within the network and community to contribute. So that's just the other sort of lesson learned, because it was definitely some different things that we learned through trying to do a space mission as a volunteer project with like unpaid volunteers. It just eventually people just sort of dropped out and things didn't go anywhere and it didn't happen. So yeah, we just want to make sure that we are able to get a space mission out there, in relation to the network in some ways, but it's not going to be like a decentralized project right away. But the hope is that the next mission will be, but the first one will be done more like was like a core group of people and making sure that everything is like legally and technologically sound, because yeah, aerospace is just also more complicated too when it comes to building these relationships with payload service providers, launch providers, etc. So we need to just ensure that we can make that happen first and then figure out ways to open that up more, because it is complicated because of sanctions and ITAR and all of this stuff. Very complicated.
Right, makes sense. Complicated and expensive. You also mentioned the magazine and something else. Like, yeah, what are the other things that you're trying to get off the ground, or like what are the first steps, I guess, towards that long vision?
Yeah, so there's a project called Black Sky Nexus now, and it'll be a zine and a wiki, and it's partially inspired by the whole Earth catalog, Armando 2000, and first it'll be a digital resource, but we also want to print the zine aspect of it physically as well. So that would probably be, I think we haven't figured it out if it's like 2 issues a year or 4 issues a year, or maybe just 1 issue a year to start. But in the zine, there will be original articles, but then we'll also have like, guides and excerpts from the wiki in there. For example, like how to anonymize Ethereum, and just sort of teaching people that, okay, Ethereum's not private, but these are some tools you can use, whether it's like, okay, you can use Tornado Cash or Aztec Protocol, but having like these step-by-step guides. So yeah, some of the focus for the guides will be privacy and anonymity, and then like cooperative DAOs and cooperative organizing, and like just like so the focus is, I would say, like, you know, we want to try to specialize in a niche area as far as like what we want to help teach people, and then also just have regular crypto 101 type resources. So since we do want to make this a print publication, for the first issue, we were thinking it would be great if it has some resources that, for example, like if you're like, oh, I have like this friend that should get into the crypto community, and you might want to buy them this zine as a gift, and it'll have like, you know, fun articles, art, but then it'll also have some resources and guides, and that'll be sort of like the first issue. So that's what we want to start to get some DAO funding for. And I started to write up a proposal, probably start sharing it with different DAOs over the next few weeks. And yeah, so that's the main thing. And then there is an artist residency that Black Sky is doing too, but that also needs some funding to keep it going, because I was bootstrapping it before for a few months, but now to continue to do it, it would be great if some other organizations would be able to put in some money to operate that. So it's a bit on semi-hold right now for the next 3 months, unless I can put together some proposals to get that funded. But the artist residency, it's to enable more women to get involved in the community. So we want to prioritize women artists that want to experiment with cryptocurrency. So, you know, women that create digital art, that want to create NFTs and have a place in New Mexico where they don't have to worry about paying rent. They'll get a monthly stipend, like $500 to $1,000 a month for about 3 to 6 months. And, you know, they'll have an opportunity to work on their art. But in parallel to that, another component of the artist residency is teaching the people in the program for how to contribute to DAOs, because I think it's hard to make it as an NFT artist right away, just like it's hard to make it as an artist in the world right away. So there's like, in parallel to them having a space to work on creating their art, there's also like training for how to participate in DAOs. So that's why some of the resources that we want to prioritize first for the wiki will be for these people that will be in the residency program.
Very cool. And have you planned on trying to get a grant from Meta Gamma Delta?
Meta Gamma Delta is definitely on the list of one of the organizations, but I think I just haven't figured out how to position these different proposals yet, because right now the main proposal is for the zine and wiki, but I feel like they might be interested in funding the resources that would be for people that are in the residency program and potentially a few months of the residency program. So definitely one thing that we're going to try to do is like fine tune the proposal to be aligned with different DAOs and just try to get, you know, each component funded in different ways.
Right. I think that makes sense. I like that we're trying to have separate proposals for each of the projects. And it was actually recommended to me also that we should do that in metagame as well, but we just have so many things going on. I just wanted to like try to get funding for metagame as a whole, but I might have to take that same approach after all.
Yeah, I think it would be good. I think right now maybe the total that we're seeking to get like just the zine and wiki funded is like 115,000 or something, but I feel like we'd be more successful in getting that funded if we break it apart, and okay, maybe one DAO puts in 25,000, maybe one puts 15,000, maybe another puts like 50,000, just kind of spread it across different DAOs, and then fine tune like the different components that would be favorable to each of the DAOs to increase the chances of success. So that's what we're trying to strategize a bit right now.
Cool. And how many of you are there?
Right now, there are about 6 or 7 people that would be contributors to the zine and wiki, but I would say there are 3 core contributors that, you know, the main people that were editing the proposal and will probably be like the editors of the zine. But that's one thing that has not been sorted out yet, is like, okay, how is this zine or how's like the community around the zine and wiki going to be governed, but it will be modeled after cooperatives where or how DAOs generally work. It's like, okay, there are some initial core people. After you contribute for a period of time, you can advance to be member as well. That's sort of the initial design that needs to be documented a bit more. But I would say the goal right now is just to get the content out there and then, yeah, provide more pathways for other people to participate in that process next. But I'm like, okay, right now, let's just get some funding. And then once that is set, there's more time to start creating governance working groups to grow the project.
You're right. I think that makes sense. That sort of minimal approach. Like start doing this thing. We don't have to be a DAO. We don't have to have governance. We don't have to just do this thing. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do something more like that with if I start another project. Although I think I'm stuck with metagame now. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on the show.
Wish you all the best with the fundraising and hope to see you in Amsterdam.
Yeah, definitely. Take care. I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.